Chapter 24. Luraloo speaks of Earth and the ways of men. The troll had found Orion in his castle, and had laid his plan before him. Briefly, the plan was to have more whips for the pack, for one alone could not always guard every hound from straying when they went to the boundary of twilight, where but a few yards away lay spaces from which if a hound ever came home, as lost hounds do at evening, it would come home all worn and bedraggled with age for its half-hour of straying. Each hound, said Luraloo, should have its troll to guide it, and to run with it when it hunted, and to be its servant when it came home hungry and muddy. And Orion had seen at once the unequaled advantage of having each hound controlled by an alert, if tiny, intelligence, and had told Luraloo to go for the trolls. So now, while the hounds were sleeping on boards in a doggy mass in each of their kennels, for the dogs and the bitches dwelt each in a separate house, the troll was scurrying over the fields we know, through twilight, trembling on the verge of moonlight, with his face turned toward Elfland. He passed a white farmhouse with a little window towards him that shone bright yellow out of a wall pale blue, with a tint that it had from the moon. 2 dogs barked at him and rushed out to chase him, and this troll would have tricked them and mocked them on any other day, but now his mind was full to the brim with his mission, and he heeded them no more than a thistledown would have heeded them on a windy day of September, and went on bouncing over the tips of the grasses till the pursuing dogs were far behind and panting. And long before the stars had palled from any touch of the dawn, he came to the barrier that divides our fields from the home of such things as him, and leaping forward out of the earthly night, and high through the barrier of twilight, he arrived on all fours on his natal soil in the ageless day of Elfland. Through the gorgeous beauty of that heavy air that outshines our lakes at sunrise, and leaves all our colors pale. He scampered full of the news he had with which to astonish his kith. He came to the moors of the trolls where they dwell in their queer habitations, and uttered the squeaks as he went, whereby the trolls summon their folk. And he came to the forest in which the trolls have made dwellings in boles of enormous trees. For there be trolls of the forest and trolls of the moor, 2 tribes that are friendly and kin, and there he uttered again the squeaks of the troll's summons. And soon there was a rustling of flowers throughout the deeps of the forest, as though all 4 winds were blowing. And the rustling grew and grew, and the trolls appeared, and sat down, one by one, near Luraloo. And still the rustling grew, troubling the whole wood, and the brown trolls poured on, and sat down round Luraloo. From many a tree bole and hollows thick with fern they came tumbling in, and from the high thin gommocks afar on the moors, to name as are named in Elfland those queer habitations, for which there is no earthly name, the odd grey cloth-like material draped tintwise about a pole. They gathered about him in the dim but glittering light that floated amongst the fronds of those magical trees, whose soaring trunks outdistanced our eldest pines, and shone on the spikes of cacti of which our world little dreams. And when the brown mass of the trolls was all gathered there, till the floor of the forest looked as though an autumn had come to Elfland, strayed out of the fields we know, and when all the rustling had ceased, and the silence was heavy again as it had been for ages, Luraloo spoke to them, telling them tales of time. Never before had such tales been heard in Elfland. Trolls had appeared before in the fields we know, and had come back wondering, but Luraloo amongst the houses of Earl had been in the midst of men, and time, as he told the trolls, moved in the village with more wonderful speed than ever it did in the grass of the fields of earth. He told how the light moved, he told of shadows, he told how the air was white and bright and pale, he told how for a little while earth began to grow like Elfland, with a kinder light and the beginning of colors. And then, just as one thought of home, the light would blink away, and the colors be gone. He told of stars. He told of cows and goats and the moon, 3-horned creatures that he found curious. He had found more wonder in earth than we remember, though we also saw these things once for the first time. And out of the wonder he felt at the ways of the fields we know, he made many a tale that held the inquisitive trolls, and gripped them, silent, upon the floor of the forest, as though they were indeed a fall of brown leaves in October that a frost had suddenly bound. They heard of chimneys and carts for the first time. With a thrill they heard of windmills. They listened spellbound to the ways of men, and every now and then, as when he told of hats, there ran through the forest a wave of little yelps of laughter. Then he said that they should see hats and spades in dog kennels, and look through casements and get to know the windmill, and a curiosity arose in the forest amongst that brown mass of trolls, for their race is profoundly inquisitive. And Luraloo stopped not here, relying on curiosity alone to draw them from Elfland into the fields we know, but he drew them also with another emotion, for he spoke of the haughty, reserved, high-glittering unicorns, who tarried to speak to trolls no more than cattle when they drink in pools of ours trouble to speak to frogs. They all knew their haunts, they should watch their ways, and tell of these things to man, and the outcome of it would be that they should hunt the unicorns with nothing less than dogs. Now, however slight their knowledge of dogs, the fear of dogs, as I have said, is universal amongst all creatures that run, and they laughed gustily to think of the unicorns being hunted with dogs. Thus Luraloo lured them toward earth with spite and curiosity, and knew that he was succeeding, and inwardly chuckled till he was well warmed within, for amongst the trolls none goes in higher repute than one that is able to astound the others, or even to show them any whimsical thing, or to trick or perplex them humorously. Luraloo had earth to show, whose ways are considered amongst those able to judge to be fully as quaint and whimsical as the curious observer could wish. Then up spake a grizzled troll, one that had crossed too often earth's border of twilight to watch the ways of men, and while watching their ways too long, time had grizzled him.
"Shall we go," he said, "from the woods that all folk know, and the pleasant ways of the land to see a new thing and be swept away by time?"
And there was a murmur among the trolls that hummed away through the forest and died out, as on earth the sound of beetles going home.
"Is it not today?" he said. "But there they call it today, yet none knows what it is. Come back through the border again to look at it, and it is gone. Time is raging there like the dogs that stray over our frontier, barking, frightened and angry and wild to be home."
"It is even so," said the trolls, though they did not know. But this was a troll whose words carried weight in the forest.
"Let us keep today," said that weighty troll, "while we have it, and not be lured where today is too easily lost. For every time men lose it, their hair grows whiter, their limbs grow weaker, and their faces sadder, and they are nearer still to tomorrow."
So gravely he spoke when he uttered that word, tomorrow, that the brown trolls were frightened.
"What happens tomorrow?"
one said.
"They die," said the grizzled troll, "and the others dig in their earth and put them in, as I have seen them do, and then they go to heaven, as I have heard them tell."
And a shudder went through the trolls far over the floor of the forest. And Luraloo, who had sat angry all this while to hear that weighty troll speak ill of earth, where he would have them come, to astonish them with its quaintness, spoke now in defense of heaven.
"Heaven is a good place,"
he blurted hotly, though any tales he had heard of it were few.
"Oh, the blessed are there,"
the grizzled troll replied,
"and it is full of angels. What chance would a troll have there? The angels would catch him, for they say on earth that the angels all have wings. They would catch a troll and smack him forever and ever."
And all the brown trolls in the forest wept.
"We are not so easily caught,"
Luraloo said.
"They have wings,"
said the grizzled troll. And all were sorrowful and shook their heads, for they knew the speed of wings. The birds of Elfland mostly soared on the heavy air, and eyed everlastingly that fabulous beauty which to them was food and nest, and of which they sometimes sang. But trolls playing along the border, peering into the fields we know, had seen the dart and the swoop of earthly birds, wondering at them as we wonder at heavenly things, and knew that if wings were after him, a poor troll would scarcely escape. "Well-a-day," said the trolls. The grizzled troll said no more, and had no need to, for the forest was full of their sadness as they sat thinking of heaven, and feared that they soon might come there if they dared to inhabit earth. And Luraloo argued no more. It was not a time for argument, for the trolls were too sad for reason, So he spoke gravely to them of solemn things, uttering learned words and standing in reverent attitude. Now nothing rejoices the trolls as learning does, and solemnity, and they will laugh for hours at a reverent attitude, or any semblance of gravity. Thus he won them back again to the levity that is their natural mood. And when this was accomplished, he spoke again of earth, telling whimsical stories of the ways of man. I do not wish to write the things that Lurelu said of them, lest I should hurt my reader's self-esteem, and thereby injure him or her whom I seek only to entertain. But all the forest rippled and squealed with laughter, and the grizzled troll was able to say no more to check the curiosity which was growing in all that multitude to see who it was that lived in houses, and had a hat immediately above him and a chimney higher up, and spoke to dogs, and would not speak to pigs, and whose gravity was funnier than anything trolls could do. And the whim was on all those trolls to go at once to earth, and see pigs and carts and windmills, and laugh at man. And Lurelu, who had told Orion that he would bring a score of trolls, was hard set to keep the whole brown mass from coming, so quickly changed the moods and whims of the trolls. Had he let them all have their way, there were no trolls left in Elfland, for even the grizzled troll had changed his mind with the rest. 50 he chose, and led them towards Earth's perilous frontier. And away they scurried out of the gloom of the forest, as a whirl of brown oak leaves scurries on days of November's worst.